Baking powder. It's the magic ingredient that gives our cakes, cookies, and pancakes that perfect rise. But have you ever wondered how this fluffy making marvel is made? Let's take a journey inside a baking powder factory. The history of baking powder, a revolutionary discovery. Before baking powder, baking was a challenge. For centuries, bakers relied on yeast and whipped egg whites to make dough rise. A slow, unpredictable process. But everything changed in the 19th century with the discovery of chemical leavening agents. The journey began with baking soda, discovered in the late 1700s, but it needed an acid to react properly. Early bakers used vinegar or sour milk, but this method wasn't consistent. In 1843, English chemist Alfred Bird invented the first form of baking powder. He created it for his wife, who was allergic to yeast, using a combination of baking soda and cream of tartar. A few decades later, in the 1860s, Eben Norton Horsford in the US developed a more stable version, leading to the rise of brands like Calumet, Clabber Girl, and Royal Baking Powder. By the early 20th century, baking powder became a household staple, revolutionizing home baking. Today, thanks to those early inventors, we have fast, reliable, and perfectly balanced baking powder to help us create delicious treats with ease. Now, let's see how it's made. But before we continue, I'm curious to know, what do you use baking powder for? What is your favorite recipe to use baking powder in? Comment below the video. And now, let's dive right into it. Now, let us talk key ingredients first and how they are made. Number 1, sodium bicarbonate, baking soda, production. First up, baking soda, also known as sodium bicarbonate, NaHCO3. This essential ingredient is made through the Solvay process, a chemical reaction that combines salt, sodium chloride, limestone, calcium carbonate, and ammonia. In this process, carbon dioxide and ammonia react with the saltwater solution to produce sodium bicarbonate crystals. These tiny crystals are then filtered, dried, and ground into the fine white powder we recognize as baking soda. Number 2, acid component, cream of tartar and sodium acid pyrophosphate. Now let's talk about the acid that helps baking powder create that signature rise. Different types of acid can be used, but the most common are cream of tartar and sodium acid pyrophosphate. Cream of tartar. Would you believe that cream of tartar comes from wine? It's a natural byproduct of winemaking, formed as crystals inside wine barrels. These crystals, called potassium bitartrate, are collected, purified, and ground into a fine acidic powder that reacts with baking soda to release carbon dioxide gas when mixed with liquid. Sodium acid pyrophosphate. For commercial baking powders, factories sometimes use sodium acid pyrophosphate, SAP, instead of cream of tartar. This acid is synthetically produced by heating a mixture of sodium phosphate salts. The result is a stable, powdered acid that works in a similar way, triggering a controlled release of gas when baked. Number 3, cornstarch, the moisture absorber, an essential ingredient that prevents baking powder from reacting too soon. Cornstarch is made from dried corn kernels, which are soaked and ground to extract the starchy part of the grain. This fine white powder acts as a moisture absorber, ensuring the baking soda and acid stay dry until you mix them with liquid into your recipe. Without cornstarch, baking powder might activate too early and lose its rising power before it even reaches the oven. Once these key ingredients are carefully processed and packaged, they are shipped to the baking powder factory. Here, they'll be blended in just the right proportions to create the perfect leavening agent for fluffy cakes, muffins, and biscuits. Now that we have our key ingredients, sodium bicarbonate, an acid, and cornstarch, it's time for the most crucial step, precision mixing. Each batch of baking powder must be perfectly balanced to ensure the right rise in your favorite baked goods. The first step in mixing is precise weighing and dosing. Too much acid, and your baked goods could taste sour. Too much baking soda? You might get a metallic or soapy flavor. To prevent mistakes, modern factories use computerized systems that automatically measure each ingredient down to the gram. Once the ingredients are carefully measured, they move to the industrial mixer. Here, powerful rotating paddles mix the baking soda, acid, and cornstarch evenly and consistently. This step is critical. If the ingredients aren't properly blended, some parts of the baking powder might react too soon, while others may not activate at all. But there's one more challenge: moisture control. Baking powder must stay dry until it's ready to be used, or the chemical reaction could start too early. That's where cornstarch plays a key role. It acts as a buffer, absorbing any moisture and keeping the baking soda and acid from interacting before they reach your cake batter. Before it moves on to packaging, each batch undergoes strict quality control. Factory technicians test for particle size, ensuring the mixture is fine and uniform, moisture content, making sure no premature reaction occurs, leavening power. A small sample is tested in a lab to ensure it reacts correctly. If the baking powder doesn't pass the tests, it's sent back for remixing or adjustments. Only the perfect batches make it to the next step, packaging. Now that our baking powder is perfectly blended, it's time to seal in the freshness and get it ready for your kitchen. Let's see how it's packaged for delivery. Once it passes all tests, the baking powder is funneled into jars, tins, or pouches. High-speed machines seal them airtight to keep moisture out, ensuring that the product stays fresh and effective. Finally, the packaged baking powder is shipped to grocery stores and bakeries worldwide, ready to help create fluffy pancakes, airy cakes, and delicious cookies in kitchens everywhere. The chemistry of baking powder. Now that we know how baking powder is made, let's explore the science behind the magic. What actually happens when baking powder is mixed into your cake or cookie dough? It all comes down to a simple but powerful chemical reaction. Step number 1, activation with liquid. First reaction. When you mix baking powder with water, milk, or eggs, the acid and base dissolve, allowing them to interact for the first time. This triggers an acid-based reaction. The baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, NaHCO3, reacts with the acid, like cream of tartar or sodium acid pyrophosphate. This reaction releases carbon dioxide, CO2, gas in the form of tiny bubbles which start to aerate the batter or dough. These bubbles are what give baked goods their light and airy texture. Step 2, heat-activated rising, second reaction. But the real magic happens in the oven. Many modern baking powders are double-acting, meaning they produce gas twice, once when mixed with liquid and again when exposed to heat. As the temperature rises, any remaining unreacted baking soda breaks down, releasing more carbon dioxide gas. The heat also strengthens the dough or batter structure, trapping the gas bubbles inside. The result? A perfectly risen cake with a soft, fluffy texture. Getting the right amount of baking powder is crucial. Too much baking powder, your cake might rise too quickly and collapse because the structure can't hold all the extra gas. Too little, your baked goods won't rise enough and could turn out dense or flat. Just right, a balanced reaction gives you a beautifully fluffy and delicious result. So the next time you bite into a light, airy cake or a fluffy pancake, remember, it's all thanks to a little baking powder and some amazing chemistry. Happy baking and happy experimenting with science in your kitchen. And that was it for today's episode. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more deep dives into the world's most fascinating foods. In case you have missed some of the older episodes, we have you covered. We have attached a special selection of past Factor Review episodes to this video. So stay with us and enjoy more fascinating food discoveries. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next episode. We've given the world some iconic shapes: the pyramid, the wheel, the cube, and of course, the pretzel. And who doesn't love the warm, rich smell of freshly baked pretzels? Those golden brown twists, lightly salted, with a perfectly crispy outside and a soft, chewy inside. But how is this delicious snack made? Did you know pretzels have been around since the 7th century? It all started in Germany, where bakers twisted dough into the familiar shape and called it pretiola, meaning little reward in Latin. By the 18th century, German immigrants brought pretzels to America, where they became a hit in places like Philadelphia. Today, we enjoy them in all sorts of ways: soft, chewy, crisp, and crunchy. So how do we make these beloved treats on a large scale? The first step to making pretzels starts with prepping the ingredients. It all begins with high-gluten wheat flour. At the factory, the flour is kept in huge silos to stay fresh and dry, and then it gets transported through pipes, powered by compressed air, straight into the mixing area. Next up is water, and it's no ordinary water. It's kept in temperature-controlled tanks to make sure it's just right for activating the yeast. The yeast, along with salt, sugar, or malt syrup, and butter or margarine are all carefully measured by machines. These machines are like the secret ingredient to making sure every single pretzel tastes the same batch after batch. And with recipe software running everything, it's all perfectly precise. Once the ingredients are prepped, the process of creating the dough begins in large industrial dough mixers. Factories use two types of mixers depending on how much dough they're making. For smaller batches, spiral mixers do the job. Spinning the bowl with a hook mixes the dough nice and even. For larger batches, horizontal mixers come in, using powerful paddles or blades to knead big amounts of dough with ease. While the dough is mixing, it's all about building gluten. That's what makes it stretchy and strong. Cool sensors keep track of the temperature and moisture, making sure everything is just right. After about 10 to 15 minutes, the dough turns smooth and elastic, ready to head off to its next adventure, fermentation. The dough is then transferred to climate-controlled fermentation chambers or proofing cabinets. For about 30 to 60 minutes, depending on the recipe, the dough rests in special chambers where the conditions are just right. The temperature sits between 75 degrees Fahrenheit and 85 degrees Fahrenheit, and the humidity is kept at around 75 to 85%, perfect for getting the yeast working. As the dough ferments, the yeast eats the sugars and turns them into carbon dioxide, which gets trapped in the dough, making it rise and puff up. This step isn't just about getting bigger dough. It also adds flavor and gives it that perfect texture we love. Once fermentation is complete, the dough moves on to the dividing and shaping phase. First, the dough is sent through a dough divider machine, which cuts it into perfectly even pieces. This step is key, especially in large-scale production, to make sure every pretzel is the same size and shape. Next, the divided dough heads to shaping machines, which take over the job of rolling the dough into long, thin ropes. These machines twist the dough into the classic pretzel shape, forming a U, crossing the ends and pressing them down, just like a baker would. Most of the time, this is fully automated for speed and accuracy, but in some places, skilled workers still hand twist the pretzels, especially for artisanal batches. After the dough is shaped into these iconic twists, the pretzels travel along conveyors to the lye dipping station. Here, they take a quick dip in a solution of sodium hydroxide, lye, mixed with water to create an alkaline bath. This step is fast, with the pretzels only staying in the solution for a few seconds, and the concentration is carefully controlled at around 3 to 4%. The lye bath is super important. It's what gives pretzels their deep brown, glossy crust and that unmistakable flavor. While lye is caustic, the high heat of the oven neutralizes it, making the pretzels completely safe to eat. The whole dipping process is automated for safety, with workers wearing protective gear and ventilation systems managing the fumes to keep everything running smoothly. Right after their lye bath, the pretzels get their signature salty touch. As they move along the conveyor, an automated machine sprinkles coarse salt evenly across the top. This is where things get customizable. Factories can switch up the amount of salt or even swap in other toppings like sesame seeds, cheese, garlic, or cinnamon sugar. Next up, it's time to bake. The pretzels are loaded onto another conveyor that moves them through a tunnel oven. This massive oven can bake tons of pretzels at once. Inside, the oven is split into different temperature zones, each designed to do a specific job. In the first zone, the pretzels are hit with super high heat, usually around 450 degrees Fahrenheit to 475 degrees Fahrenheit, which sets the crust fast, locking in moisture and making sure the outside gets nice and crispy. As the pretzels move deeper into the oven, the temperature gradually lowers, allowing the inside to bake through evenly without drying out. The whole baking process takes about 10 to 15 minutes. Once pretzels are done baking, they move onto cooling belts to let them cool down. This step is super important because it stabilizes the pretzels, keeping their structure intact and their crust crispy. Some factories used forced air cooling systems that blow cool air over the pretzels to speed things up, After cooling, it's time for quality control. Automated systems, along with human inspectors, check each pretzel to make sure they meet the factory's standards for shape, size, and color. Any pretzels that don't make the cut are taken off the line. The rest move on to packaging. Packaging is done with automated machines that seal the pretzels in bags or boxes. The packaging machines ensure each package is filled just right. And then apply labels with all the important details, ingredients, nutritional info, and expiration dates before they head off to stores. The journey of the German pretzel is an amazing mix of tradition and modern technology. While we may not know the exact origin story, today's pretzel making process is all about blending machines, craftsmanship, and a little science. That famous twisted shape and delicious flavor have made pretzels a favorite, not just in Germany, but all around the world. And with so many variations, pretzels keep getting better and better. If you're loving this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more awesome content like this. Today, we're diving into the delicious savory world of chicken bouillon powder. You know, that magical ingredient that can take your soups, stews, and sauces from good to wow? Well, ever wonder how it's made in a factory? Stick around, because we're breaking down the entire process step by step. Let's go behind the scenes where science meets culinary magic. But before we take you to the factory, let's go back in history and see how homemade chicken or beef broth transformed into the industrialized convenience product we know today over the centuries. It begins with the age-old tradition of making broth by simmering meat, bones, and vegetables, a staple in cuisines worldwide. While fresh broth was invaluable, it wasn't always practical for long-term storage or quick use. In the 18th century, the idea of preserving broth took root. French chef Nicolas Appert developed condensed broth as part of his food preservation experiments. Around the same time, portable soup, a concentrated gelatinous broth, was used by explorers and militaries, making the first steps towards the bouillon we know today. The 19th century saw significant advancements with German chemist Justus von Liebig, who created a meat extract designed to provide a quick and nutritious meal. Around this time, companies like Magi, Swiss, and Knorr, German, introduced bouillon cubes, dehydrated blocks of concentrated broth that were easy to store and use. These cubes became popular across Europe and eventually the world. In the 20th century, bouillon powder emerged as an alternative to cubes. The powder's fine texture allowed for easy dissolving and precise measurement, making it particularly appealing to home cooks and professional chefs. Its popularity grew rapidly during the two world wars, as its long shelf life and compact size made it a staple in military rations. The post-World War II era brought a boom in instant foods, and bouillon powder became a key player in this movement. Companies marketed bouillon powder as a time-saving solution for busy homemakers, solidifying its place in modern kitchens. Bouillon powder remains popular for several reasons. It's convenient, cost-effective, and has a long shelf life. In essence, bouillon powder is more than just a seasoning. It's a symbol of culinary ingenuity. By the way, what is your favorite way of using bouillon powder? Comment below the video. I'm curious to know. And now, dear foodie friends, it's finally time to get into the factory. It all starts with the star of the show, chicken. Factories work closely with trusted suppliers to source high-quality chicken parts. These include bones, meat trimmings, and sometimes whole chickens, depending on the recipe. Why these parts? Because bones and connective tissue are packed with collagen and flavor, essential for making a rich, savory broth. Every batch goes through strict quality control to make sure it's fresh, safe, and up to standard. This isn't just about flavor, it's about trust. After all, this broth will end up on our dinner tables. Next up are flavor boosters. Factories bring in fresh vegetables like onions, carrots, and celery, also known as the holy trinity of broth making. These ingredients add sweetness, depth, and balance to the broth. Once the veggies arrive, they're washed, peeled, and chopped into manageable pieces using high-speed machines. This ensures they're ready to release all their goodness during the cooking process. No broth is complete without a little seasoning magic. Factories carefully measure out spices like black pepper, bay leaves, thyme, and parsley to create a balanced flavor profile. Salt is added in precise amounts to enhance the natural flavors of the chicken and veggies. Some factories have their own secret spice blends, passed down through generations to give their broth that unique signature taste. Now that ingredients are prepped, it's time to combine them. Chicken, vegetables, water, and spices are loaded into massive stainless steel kettles. These industrial kettles can hold hundreds of gallons of broth at a time. Before we continue with our broth production, I'd kindly ask you for a favor. We are putting our utmost effort into the videos for you, and your support is crucial for the growth of our channel. We would love creating more fascinating food discovery videos for you, so please like our videos and subscribe to our channel. Once the kettles are filled, it's time for the magic to happen. The ingredients simmer for hours, sometimes as long as 12, on low heat. This slow cooking process extracts every ounce of flavor, nutrients, and collagen from the chicken and vegetables. The result? A golden, aromatic broth that's packed with flavor. This step is all about patience. Good things come to those who simmer. Once the broth is simmered to perfection, it's time to separate the solids from the liquid. Factories use industrial strainers and filters to remove the chicken bones, meat, and vegetable scraps, leaving behind a clear, flavorful liquid. This step ensures the broth is smooth and ready for the next phase. To get that intense chicken flavor into bouillon powder, the liquid needs to be reduced. Factories use advanced evaporation systems to remove most of the water from the broth. The result? A thick, syrupy chicken concentrate that's bursting with flavor. We're left with pure, potent chicken flavor that's ready to be transformed into powder. Now comes the transformation. The liquid is sprayed into a large chamber filled with hot air. As the tiny droplets hit the air, the water evaporates almost instantly, leaving behind dry, powdery particles. It's like watching chicken soup turn into a savory snowstorm. Some factories use drum drying instead. The broth concentrate is spread over heated rotating drums, where it dries into thin sheets. These sheets are then ground into powder. Both methods create the same delicious result. Before the bouillon powder gets packaged, it's put through rigorous quality checks. Technicians test for flavor consistency because every batch has to taste amazing, moisture levels to make sure the powder stays shelf stable, and safety to ensure there are no contaminants. This is like the final audition. Only the perfect batches make it through. Once the bouillon powder passes quality control, it's ready to be packaged. High-speed machines fill jars, tubs, and sachets with precise amounts of powder. The containers are then sealed to lock in freshness. And just like that, this kitchen essential is ready for store shelves and eventually your pantry. Finally, the bouillon powder is boxed up and shipped to grocery stores, restaurants, and homes all around the world. Now that you know how it's made, let's talk about how to use it. Here are a few ideas. Number 1, quick broth. Dissolve a spoonful in boiling water for an instant flavorful soup base. Number 2, rice upgrade. Add a pinch to your rice cooker water for extra savory rice. Number 3, flavor boost. Sprinkle it into sauces, marinades, or casseroles for that umami punch. Number 4, DIY seasoning. Mix it with your favorite spices to create a custom seasoning blend. So there you have it, the fascinating journey of how chicken bouillon powder is made. From simmering bones to spray-dried magic, it's a process that combines science, flavor, and a whole lot of care. If you enjoyed this behind-the-scenes look, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss out on more foodie adventures. And just in case you have missed some of our older episodes, we have covered you. We have attached a special selection of past Factory Review episodes in this video. So stay with us and enjoy more fascinating food discoveries here with Factory Review. See you in the next episode.